Picture this. It's a Tuesday morning. You check your portfolio, maybe out of habit, maybe because your phone buzzed with a news alert, and the number you see is significantly lower than it was last week. Not a little lower. A lot lower. And something happens in your body before your brain even has time to form a sentence about it. Your chest tightens, your stomach drops, and within about 30 seconds, a very loud and very convincing voice in your head starts telling you that you need to do something, right now. Before it gets worse, that voice feels like wisdom. It feels like self-preservation. It feels like the financially responsible version of you finally taking charge. And it is almost certainly about to cost you more than the crash itself. Here's what that voice actually is, and why understanding it changes everything about how you navigate a market downturn. That feeling isn't financial instinct. That feeling is your amygdala. The amygdala is the part of your brain responsible for detecting threats and triggering survival responses. It's ancient, it's fast, and it is extraordinarily good at one specific job: keeping you alive in the immediate moment. When your ancestors encountered a predator, the amygdala fired, flooded their body with stress hormones, and forced a split-second decision: fight, flee, or freeze. The whole process happened in milliseconds. There was no time for nuance, no time for long-term analysis, no time to consider what the predator might do next week. Now here's the problem. Your amygdala cannot tell the difference between a lion and a market correction. To your threat detection system, a portfolio dropping 20% in 2 weeks produces the same neurological cascade as physical danger, the same stress hormones, the same urgency, the same tunnel vision, and crucially, the same suppression of the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain responsible for long-term reasoning, patience, and complex decision-making. This is called an amygdala hijack, and it's not a metaphor. During a period of acute financial stress, your brain is literally operating with reduced access to its most sophisticated decision-making capabilities. You are not the same decision-maker during a crash that you are on a calm Tuesday afternoon when markets are flat. Neurologically speaking, you are a different person. And that different person is being asked to make some of the most consequential financial decisions of their life. Now here's the thing the standard advice completely misses. Every piece of conventional financial wisdom around market downturns basically tells you to override your emotions, stay calm, think long-term, don't panic sell. And the intention is right. The advice is technically correct. The problem is that it treats emotional regulation as a matter of willpower. Like if you just try hard enough to be rational, you'll be rational. But that's not how neuroscience works. You cannot willpower your way out of an amygdala hijack any more than you can willpower your way out of a flinch when something flies at your face. The response is faster than conscious thought. This is why people who know better still panic sell. This is why intelligent, financially literate investors, people who have read all the books, who know the historical data, who understand that markets recover, still log into their brokerage accounts during a crash and start clicking. It's not ignorance, it's biology. And telling someone to just stay calm during a neurological threat response is like telling someone to just relax while their house is on fire. The advice is useless in the moment it's needed most. There's another layer to this that almost nobody talks about. During a crash, your brain doesn't just go into threat mode, it also warps your perception of the future. There's a concept in behavioral economics called extrapolation bias. When markets are falling, your brain automatically projects that trajectory forward. Whatever is happening right now feels like a preview of what's coming. The loss feels permanent. The recovery feels theoretical. And this isn't irrational pessimism. It's your threat detection system doing exactly what it evolved to do, which is assume that a current danger will continue until proven otherwise. In the wild, that assumption keeps you alive. In financial markets, it causes you to sell at the bottom and buy back in at the top. Combined with something called loss aversion, The well-documented psychological reality that losses feel roughly twice as painful as equivalent gains feel good. And you have a neurological system that is perfectly calibrated to make every crash feel like the end of the world, and every sell decision feel like relief rather than mistake. The relief is real, by the way. That's the cruel part. When you sell during a crash, you feel better immediately. The cortisol drops. The urgency fades. Your nervous system interprets the action as having escaped the threat. What it doesn't register is that you just locked in a loss, exited the market, and now face the psychologically even harder challenge of deciding when to get back in, which you almost certainly won't do until prices have recovered significantly, because getting back in feels like walking toward the thing you just ran from. This is the full cycle. Crash happens. Amygdala fires. Prefrontal cortex goes offline. Extrapolation bias makes the loss feel permanent. Loss aversion makes selling feel necessary. You sell. You feel immediate relief. Markets recover. You wait for a pullback to re-enter. The pullback doesn't come. You buy back in higher than you sold. You've paid a significant premium for the privilege of feeling safe for a few weeks. So, what actually works? What does it look like to protect yourself from your own neurology in a way that doesn't require superhuman emotional regulation? The answer, and this is the core insight, is that the decision cannot be made during the crash. It has to be made before it. The only reliable protection against an amygdala hijack is a pre-commitment device, a rule set in a calm moment that removes the decision entirely when the stress hits. This is what professional investors actually do that retail investors largely don't. It's not that fund managers have better emotional control. It's that they have written investment policy statements, predefined rebalancing triggers, and explicit rules about what actions are permitted during a downturn. Rules they set when markets were calm and their prefrontal cortex was fully online. The rule does the thinking, so they don't have to do it in real time with a compromised brain. For individual investors, this looks simpler, but the principle is identical. Before the next crash, not during it, you decide exactly what you will and will not do when your portfolio drops. You write it down. You tell someone. You make it a rule rather than a decision. Something like, I will not log into my brokerage account more than once a week during a market decline. Or, if markets drop more than 15%, I will rebalance, but I will not sell my core positions. The specific rule matters less than the fact that it exists before the stress arrives. Because here's what happens when you have a pre-commitment and the crash hits. The amygdala still fires. The stress hormones still flood your system. The voice still says, do something. But instead of making a decision, you have a rule to follow. And following a rule requires far less prefrontal cortex capacity than making a judgment call under pressure. You've essentially given your calmer self veto power over your panicked self. And you've done it in advance, when it was actually possible. The other thing worth doing, and this is less talked about but genuinely effective, is reducing your exposure to financial news during a downturn. Not because you should be ignorant of what's happening, but because every alarming headline is another amygdala trigger. Every red number on a screen is another microdose of threat response. The information doesn't help you make better decisions during a crash. It has already happened, and your reaction to it in real time won't change the outcome. What it does is keep your nervous system in a sustained state of threat response that makes good decisions progressively harder to access. Here's the honest truth about market crashes. Every significant one in history has ended. Every single one. The market has always recovered. Not always quickly, not always comfortably, but always. The investors who came out the other side in the best position weren't the ones who made the smartest moves during the crash. They were the ones who made the fewest moves, who had a system, who had already decided what they would do before their amygdala got a vote. You are going to experience more market downturns. That is a certainty, not a prediction. The question isn't whether your brain will try to hijack your investment decisions during those moments. It will, because that's what brains do. The question is whether you'll have built a system in advance that gives you something to follow instead of something to decide. Build that system now. Write it down today. Put it somewhere you'll see it when the next red morning arrives. Not because you're a bad investor, because you're a human with a human brain operating in an environment it wasn't designed for. And the smartest thing you can do with that knowledge is plan around it, rather than pretend it doesn't apply to you. If this reframed something for you, subscribe. Every week, we dig into the psychology behind why we make the financial decisions we do and what to actually do about it. And drop a comment. What's the hardest investment decision you've had to make during a market downturn? I'd genuinely like to hear it.